A new undersea broadband cable is to be built around the African continent and the Middle East. The cable will be 37,000 kilometers long and one of the longest in the world. Let's find out exactly what this means now. I'm joined by Chief Editor of TechCentral, Duncan McLeod. Duncan, thank you very much for joining us. So essentially, why should you and I be excited?
We should be excited because this is going to bring an enormous amount of capacity to the African continent. There are already many of these cables that run around the continent with names like SAT3 and WAX and EASY and CCOM. But this is by far going to be the largest system that's ever been brought to the African continent. They're talking about a capacity, just to get technical for a moment, of 180 terabits per second of internet bandwidth. And some of the biggest companies in the world are behind it, including Facebook, China Mobile, our own Vodacom and MTN, as well as a number of other operators from around the world. So it's a very exciting development and comes just after the news that Google, which is obviously a big competitor of Facebook's, is going to build a similar cable system down the west coast of Africa called Equiano. So we are literally going to have a ton of bandwidth to play with in the coming years.
That sounds so exciting, but does that mean that we're going to be seeing a major reduction in prices? Will access be more widespread now?
It will be. We've already seen a massive decrease in prices as these cables have been laid out along the east and west coast of Africa in recent years. But the competition is increasing. There are going to be more diverse routes. So importantly, as we saw at the beginning of the year, when two submarine cable systems went down along the west coast, the WAX system and the SAT3 system affected internet connectivity across the continent, including here in South Africa. So with these new diverse routes that are going to be built on these very high capacity systems, even if 2 or 3 cables go down in the future, it shouldn't impact us as severely as it did earlier this year. So it's very good news in terms of the robustness of the internet, but at the same time, the competition is also going to further drive down international bandwidth prices, and that will eventually translate into lower internet subscription prices and mobile data for consumers.
And this is not too far in the future, right? So we're expecting it to go live in 2023 and 2024. Keen to find out just exactly how this is going to be done. How does it work?
So it's actually quite interesting. These are massive projects, as you could imagine. This one is reportedly going to cost in the region of 18 billion rand. So a lot of investment in this. But I think a lot of people don't understand or don't realize that the global internet is actually largely powered by these undersea cable systems. They're all over the world. They've been building them for decades. And these are just the latest examples of cable systems that are being built. This particular one that's backed by Facebook, called To Africa, is going to be one of the world's largest, as you mentioned, 37,000 kilometers. I think the longest in the world is around 40,000 kilometers. So this is a very big project indeed. Now, what's involved is a lot of planning, submarine surveys, to find the optimal route for laying this infrastructure. And then what happens is a company, and there are a few of them in the world, in this case it's Alcatel Siemens Networks, it's going to be doing the layout. They then take these massive cable laying ships and they literally lay the cable along the bed of the ocean around Africa. And hope it doesn't get hit by ship's anchors, which does sometimes happen. So you find that there's often a cable repair ship that has to be dispatched to fix these systems. But yeah, they basically lie on the bottom of the ocean floor and provide the world with internet access.
Who runs this? You mentioned a number of players and teaming up with the Middle East, but who actually runs the entire show?
Well, we haven't got detailed insight yet into what the specific model is that they're using for this particular cable system that's going to be built. But there are different models that are typically taken. You know, historically these cables have been built by big telecommunications operators, and we saw a big boom in infrastructure being built across the Atlantic between North America and Europe back in the late 1990s when the dot-com bubble was inflating, and those were typically owned and controlled by the telecommunications operators. But since then, we've seen a number of different models emerging, including private funders. In the case of CCOM along the east coast of Africa, for example, that was a private initiative, not allied to any telecommunications provider. And increasingly in recent years, and particularly, I say in the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen the big tech giants from the US starting to get involved quite heavily in investing and funding these projects. So Google and Facebook are actually amongst the biggest funders and the biggest companies involved in the world of undersea cables today, and much less so actually the telecommunications operators.
Duncan, I know you're a tech person and not necessarily an environmentalist, but one wonders just how delicate this balance has to be in terms of making sure that we don't disturb anything when nature is concerned.
I don't think they have a huge. I don't think these undersea cables disturb the natural world much. You know, they're probably about 5 centimeters thick. They lie on the bottom of the ocean. They're very heavily shielded. The fiber optic inside is probably the width, if not thinner than a human hair. You know, I suppose the environmental impact would come down to the need to send ships out to deploy this infrastructure and repair it when there are cable breaks. So there's obviously a carbon footprint there, but in terms of the actually disturbing nature on the bottom of the ocean, I think the impact is actually pretty small.
Thank you very much for that. Very, very exciting news coming up in the near future that